Welcome to our multivariate presentation on the reality of corruption in Ecuador. According to the Corrupt Perception Index by Transparency International, globally Ecuador is ranked in the top 30 of 179 corrupt countries in the world, which seems interesting considering the current president, Rafael Correa, appears celebrated by his people, yet critics blame him for extensive media control, absorption of power, and lack of transparency. The goal of this research is to investigate the level of trust that the people of Ecuador have in governmental institutions. The dataset used for this investigation is the Latin Barometer of 2007, covering 1,200 cases when specifying answers for Ecuador. In creating the index for the dependent variable trust, in which I combined the displayed questions, essentially asking how much trust or confidence an individual has in each of the following governmental institutions. The reliability analysis for this index shows that through the combination of these questions, the highest alpha score was achieved, considering that the deletion of any one of these questions would decrease the alpha score. Because Cronbach's alpha exceeds the value of 0.6, we can conclude that the questions are related enough to form an index. This is the frequency distribution of the dependent variable. The data was decoded so that the higher the value, the more trust in government an individual has. As can be seen from the frequency distribution, there is low trust in government institutions. This can be seen in the last column when looking at the cumulative percentage, which shows that the majority of people distrust their government institutions, indicating that perhaps the international community is onto something when suggesting that there are high levels of corruption in Ecuador. We shall now go into an investigation on several factors that may have influence on this. The independent variables used for this investigation will be perception of whether the government seeks the wealth of the people, the perception of fairness of income distribution, and the trust in news sources. An essential part in an effective democracy is having support of the people. Practical experience is usually a significant factor in determining views as supported by Boucher and Van der Waal 2001. The hypothesis for this variable is thus the more people believe that a government seeks their welfare, the more trust exists in government. The second independent variable is income distribution. Henry Gauss states that economic inequality exerts a negative influence on trust. Ultimately, when income distribution is not as the people would like to see it, there is distrust in government, which causes instability, which is not desirable for anyone. The hypothesis for this income distribution variable is thus the higher the equality of income distribution, the higher trust in government. For the third independent variable, I created an index combining the trust in newspapers, television, and radio. The reliability analysis produced an overall alpha of 0.67, suggesting that the questions were late enough to form an index. Because the survey took place in 2007, it is important to note that Korea had not yet put in place the government-owned media source, but Ecuador actually was relatively free in governmental influence on media. The results of the regression analysis show a positive relationship between the three independent variables and the dependent variable trust in government. The overall significance as well as the independent sig-t scores are all below 0.0001, indicating that the relationship is highly significant and not likely due to sampling error. The tolerance for all the values is above 0.9, indicating that multicollinearity is not an issue for this investigation. The R-square for the regression is 0.29270, indicating that 29.3% of variation in the trust of government variable is explained by the variation in the three independent variables. An example of how the b-values are read is, for example, for every 1 unit of change you will see in how well people perceive government's care for them, there will be a 0.45 unit positive change in the amount of trust they'll have in government. More strongly so, income inequality and trust in media work almost have a 1-to-1 scale with the high b-values of 0.788 and 0.794 respectively. In reflection to my thesis, I was correct in hypothesizing a positive relationship between the three independent variables and their influence on trust in governmental institutions. The diagram displays the results and shows that the beta values for each of the variables indicate the comparative contribution that each has in explaining the variance in the trust variable. What can be observed is that trust in media has more than double the effect of trust in government than either perspective income distribution or perception that government cares for people's welfare. This can perhaps be explained through the strong relationship that people see between government and media. For further investigation, we shall add an additional variable to see its influence on trust in government, but also potential changes in the explanation of variation in the independent variables seen there. The new variable chosen for this analysis is people's opinion of what the worst problem in 2004 to 2006 was. In the table you can see the variety of responses received, as there were no answers to choose from. For the sake of only having a few categories, only categories with more than 100 respondents were chosen to create the new variable of perception of the worst problem in Ecuador, which can be seen as highlighted in the table on the right. The hypothesis for this regression will be that knowing individuals' perspective on the worst problem in Ecuador increases the explained variance in trust in government, thus increasing the values of other independent variables too. The new hypothesis for the effect of the addition of the new variable is that all the variables will be amplified through the expression of what they believe to be the worst problem in the country, ultimately increasing the amount of explained variance in the dependent variable, trust in government. The table displayed here is a combination of two regression analyses. Model 1 represents the original regression, while Model 2 is an elaboration that represents the results with an addition of the new variable of the worst problem in Ecuador. The second regression has an overall significance of 0.000, indicating that the results are not due to sampling error. The adjusted R-square for the second regression also indicates explained variance of approximately 32%, which is higher than the original 29.3%. All the values except poverty and social inequality are significant factors in contributing to the variance found in trust in government, with a p-value less than 0.001. The b-value suggests that controlling with the worst problem increases the significance of perception of government care and income distribution on trust in governmental institutions. B-values only increase slightly, but not sufficiently. Therefore, it is safer to say that this is a case of replication. It is trust in media that increases with the addition of the new variable, which is contrary to the hypothesis made earlier. This means that when controlling the worst problem variable, the significance of trust in media and trust in government declines. Like the above two variables, however, considering the role of thirds for difference between 0.794 and 0.778 is not significant enough to name certification, and this is also a case of replication. What is significant to note is that all the dummy fields have a negative value. This means that trust in governmental institutions increases, consideration of the worst problem becomes less, which seems logical, as it would only be natural to be concerned with less of problems when thinking that your government has the ability to handle them. In conclusion, the beta values indicate that trust in media remains the strongest factor in explaining variance in trust in governmental institutions. In addition, the elaboration analysis found that replication could be observed for all the variables, and changes in the b-values were not significant enough to be suppression or specification. Further research might investigate the change over the past few years due to Korea's new reforms, or policies which have been changed due to the new way of Ecuador functions, both socially and economically. Also, it would be of interest to run an interaction of several variables that would have potential to explain the partial specification found in the effect of Ecuador's worst problem on trust in media. Thank you.